Welcome to the Self-Healing Communities podcast, where we give you a deeper understanding of the neurobiology of trauma, healing, and human resilience. This podcast is put on by the Self-Healing Communities of the Greater Michiana region. The Self-Healing Communities of Greater Michiana's mission is to nurture personal and community well-being through the neuroscience of human resilience and the celebration of our collective strengths. This is episode number 4, where we will be diving into our mission statement. We will have Dr. Nancy Michael join us as our guest. Stay tuned. Today we have Dr. Nancy Michael, the Director of Undergraduate Studies for Neuroscience and Behavior in the College of Science for the University of Notre Dame, and we will be talking about Self-Healing Communities' mission statement. Hi, Dr. Michael.
Hi, Carolina.
So as I mentioned in the intro, our mission statement is the Self-Healing Communities of Greater Michiana's mission is to nurture personal and community well-being through the neuroscience of human resilience and the celebration of our collective strengths. I know you guys took a long time to work on this and develop it and have a very precise language in this one sentence. So could you kind of talk about why certain things were included in here and why there is an emphasis on human resilience and the celebration of our collective strengths?
Sure. That's a big question. So we'll break it down a little bit. First of all, it is like almost comical how long and how many conversations and how many meetings we had to like figure out the one sentence, right? And the words, because the wordsmithing can feel annoying and painful at times, but right, like making sure that the words, because the words have like the meaning that you might find in the dictionary, but then they're also this broader valence or feelings or like the cultural meanings of these words. And so I think it was definitely worth the time, right? And so I think from the earlier episodes, it's pretty clear neuroscience of human resilience, right? Okay, so neuroscience has a pretty solid framework. But like the idea of collective strengths is, I think, a little bit of a pivot from, so I live in the academic world a lot of the time, and we're very focused on like, personalized medicine and individual, systems and things like that. But it's really interesting also from a neuroscience perspective that the human nervous system really only has a chance at being healthy in and through relationship with others, right? Kind of if you look at like long game human history too, there weren't these universal standards that all humans had to live up to. Yeah. It really was a collective community where people lent their strengths, right? That like for a hunter-gatherer society to survive, you need people that are not only good at management, but you need people that are good at knot tying, and people that are good at sharpening, tools, and people that are good at cooking, and people that are good at understanding the natural landscape or tracking, right? And so what those structures allowed for, just kind of in the lack of structure that was present, right, was that throughout development, that younger individuals were able to kind of float around and find where they were curious and find what they were interested in. Yeah. And then we took advantage of these kind of intrinsic motivational systems to be like, oh, I really, really want to learn how to trap. Right. Yeah. And some people might be like, oh, I really, really want to learn how to, like, I don't know, grind wheat, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like grind grains to produce food to feed. Younger kids were like responsible for getting water, and the consequences were that like people just died. Like we wouldn't have enough food to eat, we wouldn't be able to hunt, we wouldn't have water, right? Yeah. So it's a really interesting, the nervous system is the same now, but culturally and structurally we live a lot different. And so in the United States in 2023, right, we're pretty individualistic, right? There's a lot of conversation around you do you, right? Yeah. But kind of within that, it's not like you do you and we mutually respect each other's dignity and humanness in honoring how you show up and who you are in the world. Yeah. It's more like you do you and I'll do me, and we right, like, and there's this distance between us, right? Which is really contrary to what the nervous system actually needs for wellness, right? And so the celebration of our collective strengths is that, like, that we need you and we need Joe and Sam and George and like,
Yeah, there needs to be engagement between the
yeah,
two. Yeah.
and that everybody actually has like experiences that are helpful that we can actually learn if we take the time to listen, right? That like everybody has the opportunity to contribute, perhaps not to this universal standard that's right, like the standard of education, right? That like that's not how their brains are remarkably and wonderfully diverse.
Yeah.
Right. And so holding brains to a nervous systems to a universal standard
Doesn't make sense.
doesn't make sense,
Yeah.
right? And it sets up a lot of brains and nervous systems for failure because
they don't reach that standard.
yeah, because this standard is very particular, where like my nervous system and brain was given lots of structure and generational success and education and resource stability, right? That my nervous system was set up to be able to be successful in the system as prescribed, right? But you put my nervous system in a different structure, right?
Yeah.
Like I have no practical skills, right? I have one of my best friends, her husband is, he can fix or build anything.
That's amazing.
Right? Never went to college. He apologizes to me because he never went to college.
Wow.
Right? That's totally messed up.
Yeah.
Like my brother and I joke around, like if the zombie apocalypse ever came, like I would literally have nothing to lend. Right? Like, I can follow instructions.
Yeah.
Ta-da! Right? But it's so this idea of collective strengths, that there's so much really, really dominant and powerful narrative about like this one universal thing that we should all be, when really like that's never been true in human brains and human nervous systems or in like behavior, right? But it's become so prescripted. So really trying to just elevate that piece of it to celebrate the collective strengths, because like brain care is self-care, right? Like stronger together, hashtag, right? like it's so hard to say these things without like half of the people listening totally rolling their eyes about it. But from the way that the nervous system expects to be seen and perceived and engaged with in a broader social setting, we're actually required to be stronger together. Like the expectation is that we are together, and that is where we gain our strength.
A question that I have, in class, you talk about enrichment, and I was wondering if you could talk about enrichment, and is there a connection between collective strengths and enrichment?
So enrichment, in the way that we talk about it in class and the way that we talk about, like the literature would talk about enrichment, is like has also kind of taken on a life of its own in terms of like, how do we get these enriching experiences for our kids and start them in these things at younger ages so that we can enrich their experience, right? So again, I would put this in the context of just kind of long game human history, right? My opinion, in the context of 2023, and probably like the 1980s, when all of this stuff started to come part of like cultural language, that compared to staying inside and watching TV, that the nervous system expects other things, right? So again, from long game humans, the enrichment or just the normal environment of development was like, you're going to be strapped to primary caregiver for probably the first 3 to 6 months of life, maybe 9 months, right? Until you can generally fully ambulate on your own. It wasn't safe for you to sit in a bouncy chair, right? So you were in really, really close proximity to primary caregiver, which meant that you were involved in language conversations, not necessarily directed, but you were close enough in proximity to all of those conversations that right now we say like, talk with your baby. But right, like you were just in the mix, because you were obligated, because you were strapped to your caregiver, right? All right. You were likely outside a lot. So all of the light, the shadow, the texture, the color changes in angle of sunlight, strapped caregiver. So any movement caregiver did, they were walking around, they were up, they were squatting, they were, that was all vestibular and motor balance stimulation in your developing nervous system. So I just want to be really careful about the word enrichment, because again, I think in this cultural context, it obligates us to spend a ton of money on stuff, right? Like high contrast images, or, baby Einstein made a ton of money because there was a study done with college students about listening to classical music before an exam. Right now, enrichment sets us up to just spend a lot of money, right? You're supposed to get your kid involved in these things. You need to get them, playing piano and scheduled and on a sports team and buy these toys. And if you don't, then you're a bad caregiver, right? Like like that couldn't be further from the truth,
Yeah,
right? That like the strength in every single one of us, and what becomes a collective strength, is that caregivers, by attending to and attuning to their dependent, right? That's literally what the dependent is looking for, whether infant, toddler, child, like they're obligated to look to us for their safety and access to the greater world. And so you don't need to spend any money, right? You can take your kid outside for a walk and talk with them about what you see, and you can, or just not even go outside for a walk. Maybe if there's like any kind of outside space that you can just sit on and like talk about texture or so just a little bit of a story. I was taking one of my daughters into daycare when she was maybe 3 years old, right? And as a grown-up caregiver that's got to get to work, right? Like the mornings are just like, from the time that my alarm goes off until the time that I arrive in my office, it is like
prime time.
Right. Like it's like a forced March marathon, right? And right, so like every second kind of counts. So it's really easy to be like, no, we got to go, right? Like it's really easy to kind of lose whatever. All right, so we're out of the house. We're walking into daycare, and she's suddenly distracted, right? And she's distracted by the texture of the concrete.
Whoa.
Right? Because she's 3, right? And so in my grown-up nervous system, I am very clear on like what needs to be paid attention to, what's salient, what's innocuous, what I can just breeze right by. In her 3-year-old nervous system, everything is new almost, right? And so she's walking on her own. I'm in a hurry. So I'm like a couple of steps in front of her, and I get to the door and I turn around and she's not there because she's stopped,
looking at concrete.
And you know what I mean? And she's like, Christian, little kids are really cute. So there's this 3-year-old little body just kind of like crouched down, like staring down and like rubbing her hand all over the concrete. And what she was noticing is that there was one, concrete's like a bunch of like tiny little rocks mixed with something that I don't know, but my friend's husband, who can build all the stuff, and tell me exactly what he could probably make it. There was a big rock, right? That was part of the concrete, but it was like, like a centimeter and a half, 2 centimeters in diameter. And that it stood out to her as this weird thing, right? And so again, like it costs nothing but time to provide children the enrichment that they are looking for, right? And then that's how we help the next generation. That's how we help each other as grown nervous systems be able to identify, what are we curious about? Where can we lend our curiosities and strengths and questioning ability and problem solving ability to this thing that like my nervous system might not care anything about, but your nervous system could think is the coolest thing in the entire world and want to spend your life kind of like leaning into that to see where it takes you.
Well, and my curiosity then like moves your curiosity and your curiosity mine. So it's just this constant relationship. And also to that, right? That like in that moment, right? So the choice that I would have as a caregiver, I could have been like, kid, let's go. We're running late, right? Or I could, right? And so this is where like emotional regulation comes into play. It's so much easier to say it out loud than it is to actually put it into practice. Right. So I could have gotten frustrated and angry that we were running late and I needed to go and she needed to go, and right. And then we fracture our relationship right at the time that I'm leaving her for the day. Right. Or I could be like, hey, what'd you find? You know what I mean? Tell me. And ultimately it feels right. It's also like investment strategy. It feels more costly in that moment to take the minute and a half or even like the 30 seconds to engage with that thing, honor it, and then move on with our day, versus the time and the energy that it takes, right? When that fracture happens, there's generally a little bit more time in departure. And then how do you repair that? And most of us get distracted over the course of our day. And so we generally don't go back to repair, right? And you come home and you forget that happened or
but our synapses, right? The actual architecture of the nervous system, right? Like, so that's like, it's this terrifying and mind-blowing thing that like it all matters, right?
Wow.
Which synapses, which points in communication and connection in our brain are we practicing and making stronger? It's called word called potentiation. So which synapses are we potentiating, and which ones are we not kind of even like growing in the first place, right? And so again, celebrating our collective strengths, that like it all matters, right? It all matters, and it's just what we practice and experience and do the most that ends up creating like the balance.
That's powerful.
In the nervous system.
Wow. Today we explored the Self-Healing Community's mission statement. Thank you all so much for sharing your time with us. Please make sure you're taking care of yourself and others today, and we will see you in the next episode. Just a reminder that this is sponsored by the Self-Healing Communities of the Greater Michiana region. And if you have any more questions or want more information, please follow us at SHC Michiana or email us at selfhealingcommunities@gmail.com. And we would like to say thank you to Fabrice for providing the intro and outro music. Thank you.